Grief has a strange way of slowing time. One moment, you're standing beside the person you've shared a lifetime with, and the next, you're watching the earth swallow what's left of them. When my husband, James, passed away after 42 years of marriage, I thought the hardest part would be saying goodbye. I was wrong. The hardest part was waking up the next morning and realizing the house was too quiet, too big, without him. My son, Eric, and his wife, Danielle, came over often those first few days. They brought casseroles, flowers, and soft words that barely reached my heart. I was numb. On the third night, Eric said, "Mom, why don't you stay with us for a while? You shouldn't be alone." It sounded kind, comforting even. I packed a few things and went with them, grateful to feel like I still belonged somewhere. For weeks, I tried to stay out of the way. I helped with their kids, folded laundry, and cooked dinner the way James used to love. But as the months went on, I noticed little changes, whispers in the hallway, cold glances from Danielle, and doors closed a little too quickly when I walked by. One evening, as I was setting the table, Danielle said, "You don't have to do that, you know. We're fine." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to believe it was just grief making me sensitive. But a mother knows when love turns into tolerance. I stayed quiet, pretending not to notice how the warmth had faded. Then one rainy afternoon, I overheard my son in the kitchen whispering, "She needs to move on. It's been 6 months. We can't keep doing this." My heart sank. That night, when I asked if something was wrong, he looked away. "Mom," he said softly, "maybe it's time you start thinking about, what's next?" "What's next?" I repeated. "James is gone. You're all I have left." He sighed. "You'll always have me. But it's time for you to live on your own again." Those words hit harder than any storm. I didn't cry, not in front of him. But when I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I whispered into the darkness. "James, they're sending me away." I always thought a mother's love could protect her from loneliness. But that day, as I packed the last of my clothes into an old suitcase, I realized love doesn't always keep you safe, sometimes it just makes the pain sharper. The rain hadn't stopped since morning. The gray sky outside felt like it understood what my heart was going through. I moved slowly, folding each piece of clothing that still smelled faintly like the home I once shared with James. Eric didn't come to help me pack. He stayed downstairs, pretending to be busy with work. Danielle popped her head into the room once, just long enough to say, "I hope you understand, it's best for everyone." I wanted to ask her, everyone except who? But my throat felt too tight to speak. When I zipped up the suitcase, my hands shook. I sat on the bed for a while, staring at the family photos on the dresser. There was one from Eric's college graduation, James and I standing proudly behind him, arms around his shoulders, faces glowing with pride. I took the frame gently and tucked it into my bag. That was the moment we were all still a family. As I walked downstairs, I could hear the sound of my grandson laughing in the living room. That laugh was my favorite sound in the world. But when I reached out to hug him goodbye, Danielle stepped in. "He's watching a show, Mom. Let's not make it harder for him." So I left without saying goodbye. Eric walked me to the door, silent except for the soft squeak of my suitcase wheels on the floor. When we reached the porch, he finally said, "You'll be okay, Mom. The apartment's close by, and I'll call you." But I knew he wouldn't. Not soon, maybe not ever. He hugged me quickly, the kind of hug you give when you're ready to walk away, and then he turned B. The sound of the door clicking shut behind me felt like the end of something much bigger than just a visit. It felt like the end of being needed. The rain poured harder as I stood there, suitcase by my side, unsure where to go next. I whispered softly, "James, I did everything right. Why does it hurt so much?" But the wind didn't answer. So I lifted my suitcase, stepped off that porch, and started walking, one slow, painful step at a time. I didn't know it yet, but the path I took that day would lead me somewhere unexpected, a place that would show me that even after heartbreak, life still had more love left for me to find. The rain didn't stop that day. It followed me like the sadness I carried, steady, cold, and endless. I walked for blocks, not really knowing where I was going. My hands were freezing, my suitcase wheels scraping against the wet sidewalk. Every step echoed the same question in my head: how did I end up here? By the time I reached a bus stop, I was trembling. My coat was soaked through, and my shoes squished with every step. Cars passed by, splashing dirty water near my feet. Not one driver slowed down. I sat down on the bench and looked up at the gray sky. The clouds looked heavy, just like my heart. For a moment, I whispered, "James, if you can hear me, please give me a sign. I don't know what to do anymore." And that's when I saw her. A woman holding a bright blue umbrella was walking toward me. She looked like she was in her late 50s, tall and elegant, with a calm, gentle face. When she reached the bus stop, she stopped right in front of me and smiled. "Sweetheart, you're soaked," she said softly. "You'll catch your death out here. Come on, there's a cafe right around the corner." I tried to protest. "I'm fine," I said, though my lips were trembling. She just shook her head and said, "No, you're not. And that's okay." There was something in her voice, warmth, patience, kindness, something I hadn't heard in a long time. So I followed her. Inside the cafe, the smell of fresh bread and coffee wrapped around me like a hug. She ordered 2 cups and a bowl of soup, then sat across from me. "My name's Clara," she said, smiling. "You look like someone who's had a long day." For a moment, I tried to stay strong. But as soon as she said that, the tears came. I told her everything: my husband's passing, my son asking me to leave, how I walked out of the only home I had left. Clara didn't interrupt. She didn't pity me. She just listened, really listened, and that felt like medicine to my heart. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You can't stay out here," she said softly. "Come with me. I help at a women's shelter. We've got room, and we take care of each other. No charge. Just peace." I hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden," I whispered. "You won't be," she said. "You'll be family." That night, I followed her to a small, warm house with soft yellow lights in the windows. Inside, laughter echoed from the kitchen. Women sat around a table, sharing food, stories, and hope. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel unwanted. As I lay in bed that night, the sound of rain still tapping against the window, I whispered a quiet thank you, not just to Clara, but to God, for sending me an angel with a blue umbrella. The days at the shelter slowly became my new rhythm. I helped Clara cook breakfast in the mornings and watered the flowers in the tiny garden out back. Every night, we'd all sit together around the dinner table, sharing bits of our stories, stories of loss, survival, and starting over. For the first time in a long while, I didn't wake up with the ache of loneliness pressing on my chest. But every now and then, I'd see a little boy in the park or a man helping his mother across the street, and I'd think of Eric. My son. I wondered if he thought of me at all. One morning, as I was folding laundry, Clara walked in holding a small white envelope. "This came for you," she said with a soft smile. I frowned. "For me?" She nodded and handed it over. The handwriting on the front stopped my heart. It was Eric's. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking as I opened it. Inside was a simple note. "Mom, I don't know how to start this. Not a day goes by that I don't feel guilty for what I did. After you left, the house didn't feel like home anymore. The kids kept asking where Grandma went. Danielle couldn't handle the guilt and she left. I've been alone since, thinking about every moment I took for granted. If you can forgive me, please come home. I miss you more than I can say. Love. Eric. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I read it twice, 3 times, until the letters felt etched into my heart. Clara sat beside me quietly. You going to see him? She asked. I nodded slowly. He's still my son, I whispered. And forgiveness, that's all I have left to give. That evening, she drove me to his house. My heart pounded as I walked up the same driveway I'd left in tears months before. The porch light was on, and the smell of rain was in the air, just like that night. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door opened. Eric stood there, his eyes wide, his face pale. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then he stepped forward and whispered, Mom. I didn't let him say more. I reached up, touched his cheek, and said softly, Shh. I know. He fell into my arms, crying like a child, holding me as if afraid I'd disappear again. And in that moment, all the anger, all the hurt, it melted away. Because that's what a mother's love does. It forgives what the world says is unforgivable. It loves even when it's broken. That night, as I sat in my old room again, I looked at James's photo on the nightstand and whispered. You were right, my love. A mother's heart never truly leaves home, broken heart.